Galileo Galilei. His real name is Galileo di Vincenzo Bonaldi di Galilei. He was born on February 15, 1564 in city of Pisa. He died on January 8, 1642 at Arcetri near Florence. He is known as father of modern science and also as astronomer, physicist, engineer, or sometimes described as a polymath, wide-range knowledge. He attended in University of Pisa but didn't finish his study. He studied medicine but drawn more toward Euclidean geometry, mathematics, and scientific research. His first scientific book is La Zeta, The Little Balance in 1586. Galileo's La Zeta, in which he described a new method of measuring the specific gravity of precious metals. In 1589, Galileo was appointed to the chair of mathematics at the University of Pisa, where he wrote De Moto, a series of essays on the theory of motion which he never formally published. De Moto is known for expressing Galileo's ideas on motion during his Pisan period prior to transferring to Padua. In 1592, Galileo was appointed professor of mathematics at the University of Padua, the University of Republic of Venice. 1600 to 1606, while in Padua, he began a long-term relationship with Maria Gamba, having one son and two daughters but never married.
In 1593, Galileo Galilei invented a rudimentary water thermoscope which for the first time allowed temperature variation to be measured. It was a container filled with bulbs by varying mass, each with a temperature marking, and the buoyancy of water changes with the temperature. In 1612, Santorio Santorio, the Italian inventor, became the first inventor to put a numerical scale on this thermoscope. It was first crude clinical thermometer, as it was designed to be placed in patient's mouth for temperature taking. Neither Galileo's nor Santorio's instrument were very accurate. In 1654, Grand Duke of Tuscany, Ferdinand II was invented, the first enclosed liquid in a glass. Duke used alcohol as a liquid and still inaccurate and did not use a standardized scale. In 1714, Gabriel Fahrenheit was the first person to make a thermometer using mercury. Their more predictable expansion of mercury combined with improved glass working techniques and led to much more inaccurate thermometer.
1600s, the science of astronomy took a huge leap forward with the invention of the optical telescope and its use to study the night sky. Galileo Galilei did not invent the telescope, but was the first to use it systematically to observe celestial objects and records his discoveries. Sidereus Nuncius, the Starry Messenger, was first published in 1610 and made his famous. His interpretation of the subsequent observation of the Moon, Jupiter, and the Milky Way, which eventually led to the demise of the geometric Ptolemaic model of the universe and the adaptation of heliocentric model. Galileo's telescope, the basic tool that Galileo used, was a crude refraction telescope. His initial version only magnified 8 times but was soon refined to the 20 times magnification he used for Haas observation. For Sidereus Nuncius, it had a convex objective lens and concave eyepiece in a long tube at Museo Galileo in Florence. Galileo observation, Galileo made several key discoveries through his systematic use of refinement of the telescope. The Moon, one of the Galileo's lunar drawings, note the craters, mountains, and mere or seas. The terminator between lunar day and night is clearly seen down the center. The principle, the Moon was above the sublunary sphere and in the heavens, hence should be perfect. He found the surface of the moon to be not smooth, even and perfect spherical, but on the contrary, to be uneven, rough, and crowded with depression and bulges, and it's like the face of the earth itself, which is marked half under with chains of mountains and depth of valleys. He calculated the heights of the mountains by measuring the lengths of their shadows and applying geometry.
The moon of Jupiter. The planet Jupiter over successive nights revealed four star-like objects in a line with it. The object moved from night to night, sometimes disappearing behind or in front of the planet. Galileo correctly inferred that these objects were moons of Jupiter and orbited it just like moon orbits Earth. For the first time, object has been observed orbiting another planet, thus weakening the hold of the Ptolemaic model. Galileo named these four stars Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. The phases of Venus. Venus was observed to go through a sequence of phases similar to the Moon. This could not be explained in the Ptolemaic model, but could be accounted for by either the Sun-centered Copernican model or the Earth-centered Tychonic model that had the other planets orbiting the Sun as it orbited the Earth. Galileo rejected Tycho's model as an unnecessary hybrid and used the discovery to consolidate his support of the Copernican model. The following that I will mention is the book that Galileo have published. The first is The Little Balance on 1586, where he discussing the principles of equilibrium and the measurement of weights using a balance. On 1590, he published a book titled On Motion, where he discusses the concept of inertia, stating that an object is in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an external force. In 1600, he published the book named On Mechanics, where he explored the principles of statics and dynamics. In 1606, the operation of the geometric and military compass is a practical work where he applied mathematics to various fields, including military engineering. In 1610, the Starry Messenger that Galileo published described his celestial observation through a telescope, revealing discoveries like the craters on the moon of Jupiter, and the phases of Venus. In 1612, he published discourse on floating bodies that Galileo addresses buoyancy and the behavior of floating bodies in fluids, making significant contribution to our understanding of fluid mechanics and the equilibrium of floating objects. In 1613, he wrote the Letter on the Sunspot. In this letter, he discussed the implication of sunspot for the nature of the sun, challenging the prevailing belief that the celestial body was perfect and unblemished. In 1623, the assayer that he published in this piece, he defends the scientific method and criticized the Aristotelian approach. Galileo argues that use of mathematics in natural philosophy and discusses his telescopic observation, defending the Copernican heliocentric model as a sharp and influential critic of the scientific ideas of this time. In 1632, Galileo published Dialogue concerning the two chief world systems. It presents a fictional dialogue between three characteristics discussing the Copernican and Ptolemaic model of the universe. In 1638, the last that Galileo published is the Discourse and Mathematical Demonstration concerning two new science is a foundation with work in physics. It covers the science of motion and the strength of materials, introducing concepts like the law of falling bodies and the relationship between force and motion. The book is a cornerstone in the development of classical mechanics. So let's talk about Galileo's issue in Catholic Church. It all started in 1610 when he published his book, The Starry Messenger. By these discoveries, he supported the Copernicus theory but made it private. Only a month after his famous little book was published, Galileo resigned his post at Padua and became chief mathematician at University of Pisa without any teaching duties, and mathematician and philosopher to the Grand Duke of Tuscany. In this meeting in the meeting of the Medici Palace on December 1613, with the Grand Duke Cosimo II and his mother, the Grand Duchess Christina of Lorraine, Castelli, Galileo's successor in the chair of mathematics in Pisa, have been asked about the Copernican theory and the Holy Scriptures, but Castelli defended it and reported it to Galileo, telling that how successful the argument was. But Galileo was less convinced, so he replied Castelli, but Galileo's enemy get the copy of the note and sent it to Inquisition in Rome. Pope Paul V, the ordered the Sacred Congregation of the Index decide on the Copernican theory. The cardinals of the Inquisition met on 24 February 1616 and took evidence from theological experts. They condemned the teachings of Copernicus, and the decision was conveyed to Galileo, who have not been personally involved in the trial. Galileo was forbidden to hold Copernican views. But when Maffeo Barberini, who was an admirer of Galileo, was elected as Pope Urban the Eighth, and invited Galileo to papal audience on 6 occasions and led Galileo to believe that the Catholic Church would not make an issue of the Copernican theory. Galileo's support for heliocentrism drew attention, and in 1616, the Catholic Church issued a decree declaring heliocentrism formally heretical. In 1632, Galileo published his book Dialogue concerning the two chief world systems, which defended the heliocentrism. This led to his trial by the Roman Catholic Inquisition in 1633. Under threat of torture, Galileo recanted his views and spent the rest of his life under house arrest. In 1634, he suffered a severe blow when his daughter Virginia, Sister Maria Celeste, died. Galileo died in Arcetri near in Florence on 8th of January 1642. He wished to be buried beside his father's tomb, but in 1737 he buried in the church. It wasn't until 1992 that the Catholic Church officially acknowledged its error in condemning Galileo's idea. The Galileo affair remains a historical example of the clash between scientific inquiry and religious authority.